Hand over your client list. Immediate command from management. Gwen didn't look up from her tablet as she delivered the news. Behind her, Kip shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his expensive haircut and two new suits screaming, "Fresh graduate." His lips twitched, fighting back satisfaction as he watched my face. "The transition team needs everything by end of day," Gwen continued, sliding a manila folder across my desk. "Client contact information, service histories, renewal dates, the full package." The air conditioning hummed overhead. My throat tightened. 8 years. 8 years of answering midnight emergency calls when temperatures spiked in medical storage facilities. 8 years of memorizing the peculiar quirks of 47 different industrial refrigeration systems across the region. 8 years of building relationships so solid that plant managers called me before their own maintenance teams when disaster loomed. And now this. This child was replacing me? "Absolutely," I said, watching relief wash over their faces. "Everything's organized, just as requested." I pulled open my filing cabinet while Kip's posture relaxed. He actually believed this job was about selling cooling units and checking boxes. "Will that be all?" I asked, my voice steadier than it had any right to be. Gwen finally met my eyes. "The severance package is standard. Your building access ends at 5 p.m. IT will monitor your system activity until then." Standard. As if anything about this situation was standard. I nodded once, my mind already racing ahead. "I understand perfectly." When they left, I sat alone in my cubicle, surrounded by 8 years of knowledge that couldn't be transferred in a single afternoon. Knowledge they apparently thought was worthless. Before I continue this story, if you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. My name is Adira. Until 4 hours ago, I was the senior accounts manager for the industrial refrigeration division of a company I'd helped transform from a struggling regional supplier into an industry powerhouse. I'm methodical, detail-oriented, and passionate about my work. And I've just been blindsided by the most callous corporate restructuring I could imagine. Let me take you back to when this all began. 8 years earlier, I'd walked into this same building for my first interview. The industrial refrigeration division consisted of 3 accounts and was considered the company's problem child. No one wanted to touch it. The previous account manager had quit after just 6 months, leaving behind a mess of angry clients and incomplete service records. "It's a dead-end position," my soon-to-be boss admitted during the interview. "But if you can keep those 3 accounts from leaving, we'll consider it a win." I didn't just keep those accounts. I transformed them. Within 2 years, we had 10 clients. By year 4, 23. Now, 47 facilities depended on my expertise to keep their operations running. Pharmaceutical warehouses, food processing plants, medical storage facilities, anywhere that needed precise temperature control to prevent millions in losses. What management never fully grasped was that industrial refrigeration isn't about equipment sales, it's about trust. When a compressor fails at 2 a.m. and $1 million of vaccine starts warming, plant managers don't want a sales pitch. They need someone who understands their specific system's quirks and can talk their maintenance team through emergency protocols. I built those relationships. I rewrote technical manuals at midnight because the manufacturer's versions were dangerously incomplete. I created custom maintenance schedules based on each facility's unique humidity patterns and load fluctuations. I knew that the frozen vegetable plant needed their evaporator coils checked every 42 days, not the standard 30, because of the specific ice crystal formation in their process. Each facility had its own language, its own history, its own peculiarities that lived nowhere except in my head and my meticulously detailed personal notes. Management never valued this. They saw numbers: client retention rate, 98%, annual growth, 15%, new system installations, 32 in the past fiscal year. What they didn't see was how those numbers were achieved. Until today, when they decided I was too expensive, I pulled out my notebook, the real one, not the sanitized version I kept for company records, and flipped through pages of diagrams, troubleshooting flows, and handwritten notes from late-night emergency calls. The pasta manufacturer's ammonia system makes a distinct clicking sound 3 days before the pressure valve needs replacement. The dairy processing plant's control system needs recalibration after any power fluctuation longer than 37 seconds. None of this was in the official files. None of this was in the client database. None of this could be handed over in an afternoon. I looked at the clock. 1:22 p.m. Less than 4 hours to decide what to do. My phone buzzed with a message from Tony, the operations director at our largest pharmaceutical client. Heard rumors about changes at your company. Everything okay? News traveled fast in this industry. Too fast. I set my phone down without answering. What could I say? That the company had just erased 8 years of relationship building in a 10-minute termination meeting. I began gathering what they'd asked for. Names, phone numbers, renewal dates, service histories, the simplified versions in the system, not my detailed notes. Everything technically accurate and utterly useless without the context behind it. By 3 p.m., I'd assembled exactly what Gwen had requested. Nothing more, nothing less. I printed everything, organized it neatly in folders, and placed it on my desk. Then I picked up my phone and texted Tony back. Changes happening. Can I call you tomorrow? Her response came immediately. Anytime. One by one, I gathered my personal belongings. The orchid plant that had survived 3 office moves. The photo of my sister's family. My coffee mug with the thermodynamic equations printed on it. A gift from the maintenance team at the ice cream factory after I'd helped them through a catastrophic system failure during a summer heat wave. At 45, Gwen returned with Kip trailing behind her. Is this everything? She asked, looking at the folders. Everything you requested, I confirmed. She nodded, satisfied with my compliance. It has already transferred your email to Kip. Your company phone will be deactivated at 5 p.m. Kip couldn't contain himself any longer. I've been studying the client profiles. I think there's real potential to upgrade at least 12 facilities to the new MX7000 systems. I smiled politely, not mentioning that the MX7000 would catastrophically fail in at least 8 of those facilities due to their specific operational requirements. Good luck, I said instead, as I walked out of the building for the last time, carrying a small box of personal items. I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, but also a dawning realization. They thought they owned those client relationships because they had names on a list. They were about to learn an expensive lesson. The first call came 3 days later. It was the seafood processor's operations manager, Liam. Adira, what's going on? Some kid just called trying to sell us a complete system overhaul. Says our current setup is dangerously outdated. That's the exact opposite of what you told us last month. I don't work there anymore, Liam. They restructured. Silence on the line. You're kidding. The entire cold chain for our distribution network is built around your custom setup, the one you calibrated specifically for our flash freezing process. I know. So this new guy doesn't understand that changing our refrigerant pressure would cost us millions in facility redesign? Apparently not. Another pause. What are you doing now, Adira? I smiled for the first time in days, taking some time to consider my options. The second call came the next day, and the third. By the end of the week, I'd heard from 12 different facility managers, all with variations of the same story. The new account manager was making recommendations that demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of their operations. Then came the call that changed everything. The CEO himself, Daniel, phoning me directly on a Sunday afternoon. What did you do? His voice trembled with barely contained fury. Exactly what was asked of me. I provided the client list. Half our accounts won't return calls. The other half are threatening to terminate their service contracts. The pharmaceutical storage chain is talking about legal action over some advice Kip gave them. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. 6 facilities have already terminated their maintenance contracts, Daniel continued, his professional veneer cracking. The meat processing plant's manager laughed when Kip suggested replacing their auxiliary cooling systems. Laughed, Adira. I leaned against my kitchen counter, looking out at the Sunday afternoon sunlight filtering through my apartment windows. That's unfortunate, I said finally. What exactly did you give us? He demanded. Names, numbers, renewal dates, service histories, exactly what was requested, but not the rest, he said. Not whatever magic you worked with these clients. I closed my eyes briefly. There was no magic, Daniel. Just 8 years of answering every call, learning every system, solving every problem before it became a crisis. That knowledge wasn't in your database because you never asked for it. You never valued it. We need you back, he said, the words clearly painful for him to articulate. Name your price. I almost laughed. It's not about money. Then what? A board position? Different title? What do you want? What did I want? The question hung in the air as I considered it. Revenge? Vindication? Or something more fundamental? Recognition of what I had built? I want nothing from you, I said finally. I provided exactly what your HR department requested during termination. If that wasn't enough, that's not my problem. After hanging up, I sat on my couch, stunned by the rapid unraveling. I hadn't actively sabotaged anything. I'd simply given them exactly what they'd asked for, nothing more, nothing less. My phone buzzed again. A text from Tony at the pharmaceutical warehouse. Had an interesting conversation with your replacement today. When can we talk? Over the next 2 weeks, I fielded similar messages from 23 different facility managers. Some were angry, others confused, but all wanted to know the same thing. What had happened, and what was I doing next? I had no answers for them. Not yet. Then came the unexpected opportunity. Mila, the operations director at the frozen vegetable plant, invited me for coffee. That new guy called yesterday, she said, stirring her latte. Tried to explain to me why we should switch to their quarterly maintenance schedule instead of the custom 42-day rotation you set up. And? I prompted. I asked him why. He said it was industry standard and would streamline their service department's scheduling. She rolled her eyes. When I pointed out that we'd lose approximately $30,000 in production every time ice crystals formed on the coils under a standard schedule, he had no idea what I was talking about. I nodded. The 42-day cycle had been the result of 3 months of careful monitoring and testing. So, here's my question, Mila continued, leaning forward. If I wanted to hire you directly as a consultant, would you be interested? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't considered consulting. Consider it now. We need someone who understands our systems, not someone trying to fit us into their service model. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. Consulting hadn't been part of my plan. Honestly, I hadn't had a plan beyond getting through each day, but the seed was planted. By the end of the month, I had signed consulting agreements with 4 facilities, small contracts, focused on specific needs, but enough to pay my bills while I figured out my next steps. Then came the unexpected twist. I was reviewing maintenance logs for the ice cream factory when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Adira? It's Kip. My hand tightened around the phone. What do you want? His voice was different now, humbled, desperate. I need your help. The brewery's ammonia system is showing pressure fluctuations, and nobody can figure out why. They're threatening to sue us if their production line goes down. And why would I help you? He hesitated. Because people's jobs are at stake. Not just mine, but the brewery workers too. If that system fails, they'll lose weeks of production. I closed my eyes, conflicted. The brewery had been one of my first major accounts. Their maintenance team had trusted me, learned from me. They didn't deserve to suffer because of corporate stupidity. Text me the current readings, I said finally. 20 minutes later, I called the brewery's chief engineer directly, walking him through the necessary adjustments. The crisis was averted, but my intervention raised uncomfortable questions. Was I enabling the very company that had discarded me? Was I undermining my own position by helping them? The next day, Daniel called again. I heard what you did for the brewery, he said. Thank you. I didn't do it for you. I know, but it shows what we've lost. He paused. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss the refrigeration division. We've lost 17 accounts in 3 weeks. Kip submitted his resignation yesterday. Something like satisfaction curled in my chest, but it was hollow. People were scrambling to clean up a mess that should never have happened. What are you proposing? I asked cautiously. Come back. Double your previous salary. Complete autonomy over the division. We made a catastrophic mistake, and we know it. The offer was everything I should have wanted. Vindication, recognition, power. I'll think about it, I said, surprising myself. That night, I spread out all my notebooks on my dining table, flipping through years of accumulated knowledge. System diagrams, maintenance schedules, emergency protocols. The collective wisdom of 8 years, documented in my own handwriting because the company had never cared enough to formalize it. My phone buzzed again. Tony from the pharmaceutical warehouse. We need to talk. In person. Tomorrow. What's this about? I asked. We've made a decision about our refrigeration services, and I think you'll want to hear it directly. The next morning, I drove to the pharmaceutical storage facility, my stomach tight with uncertainty. Had they decided to stay with my former employer after all? Had Daniel somehow convinced them that things would improve? Tony met me at the entrance, her expression unreadable. "Before we talk," she said, "I should tell you that I've invited a few other people to this meeting." She opened the conference room door. Inside sat the operations directors from 12 different facilities: the meat processor, the dairy plant, the frozen food distributor, the medical storage warehouse, representatives from over a quarter of my former client list. Mila from the vegetable plant stood up. "We've been talking," she said, "about you, about what happened at your company, and about our ongoing refrigeration needs." I remained silent, unsure where this was heading. "The consulting you've done for me over the past 3 weeks has been more valuable than 3 years of standard service from your former employer," she continued. "And I'm not the only one who feels that way." Liam from the seafood processor nodded. "We've watched a company that used to provide exceptional service through you turn into a nightmare of miscommunication and dangerous recommendations. None of us wants to be part of that anymore." Tony stepped forward. "We have a proposition for you, Adira, one we think you'll want to hear." She slid a folder across the table. I opened it, my hands suddenly unsteady. Inside was a business proposal, a new company focused exclusively on industrial refrigeration management and consulting. Initial funding provided by the 12 companies represented in the room. A 3-year commitment from each, guaranteed. "We don't need a supplier who doesn't understand our businesses," Tony said. "We need you." I stared at the proposal, speechless. "You don't have to decide right now," Mila added. "But we wanted you to know that we see your value, even if your former employer didn't." As I drove home, the proposal on the passenger seat beside me, my phone rang again. "Daniel, the board meeting just ended," he said. "They've authorized me to offer you whatever it takes. Name your terms, Adira. Please, we can't lose any more accounts." I pulled over to the side of the road, looking at the folder beside me. 2 paths lay before me: return triumphant to the company that had discarded me, or build something entirely new with clients who actually valued what I offered. "I've received another offer," I said carefully. "We'll beat it, whatever it is. It's not about money, Daniel. It never was." "Then what? Tell me what you want." I took a deep breath, my decision crystallizing. "What I want is something you can't give me. Try me. I want to work with people who understood my value before they lost it." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What are you saying?" he finally asked, his voice tight. "I'm saying that I've made my decision." As I hung up, my phone immediately buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You can't take our clients. Legal will be in touch." I stared at the message, a new fear taking hold. Could they actually stop me? Did my termination agreement include non-compete clauses? Would they drag me through expensive legal battles until I gave up? For the first time since my termination, I felt a flash of doubt. Maybe I had overplayed my hand. Maybe this wasn't the clean victory I'd imagined. I called Tony immediately. "We might have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Tony asked, her voice instantly alert. I pulled off to the side of the road, engine idling. "They're threatening legal action. Something about taking their clients." "Ah," Tony said, sounding surprisingly unconcerned. "We expected that." "You did?" "Of course. That's why we had our legal team review your termination agreement before approaching you. Can you come back to the facility? There's someone you should meet." 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from Janine, a sharp-eyed attorney who specialized in employment law. She wore a simple blazer and had a stack of documents in front of her. "Your termination agreement is remarkably sparse on restrictions," she explained, pushing a highlighted copy toward me. "There's no non-compete clause, no client solicitation prohibition, nothing preventing you from starting your own business." I blinked in surprise. "That can't be right. They're a multi-million-dollar company. They must have standard protections." Janine smiled thinly. "Standard, yes. But your agreement isn't standard. It's a basic separation document that only covers confidentiality of proprietary technology and trade secrets." She tapped the paper, "which, from what I understand, isn't relevant since the clients are approaching you, not the other way around." Relief washed through me. "So they can't stop me? They can try to intimidate you, which they're already doing. They might file a lawsuit hoping you'll back down rather than fight, but they don't have legal grounds to prevent you from accepting business from clients who choose to work with you." Tony, who had been quietly listening, leaned forward. "We suspected they might try this. That's why our proposal includes a legal defense fund. If they come after you, we've got your back." The realization hit me like a physical force. These clients, these people, had planned for this. They had anticipated the company's reaction and prepared accordingly. They believed in me more than I believed in myself, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept our proposal, Mila said from the doorway. She had returned with coffee for everyone. We need someone who understands our businesses, who sees us as partners, not just accounts. I looked at the faces around me, people who valued what I had built, what I knew, what I could offer. I accept, I said. The next morning, I filed the paperwork to establish my new company, Precision Temperature Solutions. By afternoon, I had a business bank account, a temporary office space offered by the pharmaceutical warehouse, and 5 signed consulting contracts. My phone rang constantly, more clients calling, more questions about my availability, more requests for help with systems that were already showing problems under the new management. Then came the certified letter. Keys and desist, the heading blared. The company was demanding I immediately terminate all communication with current clients and return all proprietary client information. I brought the letter to Janine, who read it with an increasingly amused expression. This is bluster, she said finally. They're hoping to scare you. Notice how vague the allegations are? They don't specify what proprietary information you supposedly took because they know you didn't take anything. You provided exactly what they requested during your exit. So we ignore it? No. She reached for her laptop. We respond clearly and firmly. We establish boundaries now. Her response was masterful, acknowledging receipt of their letter, clarifying that I possess no proprietary information, had solicited no clients, and was simply responding to business inquiries from companies seeking refrigeration consulting services. It concluded with a polite but unmistakable warning about harassment and interference with legitimate business relationships. 3 days later, Daniel called again. We need to talk, he said, his voice strained. In person. I have nothing to say to you. We've lost 23 accounts in the past week. The board is demanding action. That sounds like an internal management issue. Adira, please, just meet with me. 1 hour. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, I was surprised to find him already seated, looking haggard. The polished executive I remembered had been replaced by someone who hadn't slept properly in days. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. What do you want, Daniel? He pushed a folder across the table. A partnership proposal. Your new company handles the client relationships. We provide the equipment and technical support. We split the revenue. I didn't touch the folder. Why would I agree to that? Because we still have the infrastructure you need, the supply chain, the equipment, the parts inventory, the service vehicles, all things I can build or source elsewhere, but not quickly, not cheaply. He leaned forward. This saves you years of development while giving us back what we lost when you left. I studied his face. And the legal threats? Gone. This would be a fresh start. The offer was tempting, a shortcut to building the infrastructure my new company would eventually need. But something about Daniel's desperation made me uneasy. I'll review it with my attorney, I said, finally taking the folder. As I stood to leave, Daniel caught my wrist. One more thing. The board meeting is tomorrow. I need an answer by then, or they'll pursue more aggressive options. I pulled my hand away. Threats don't work on me anymore, Daniel. Janine reviewed the proposal that evening, highlighting problematic clauses throughout. The partnership would give them veto power over client contracts. It would require me to transfer all client relationships to their customer management system. It would effectively make my company a subsidiary of theirs. This isn't a partnership, Janine said. It's a slow-motion acquisition, so I should reject it, unless you want to end up right back where you started, building value for them that they can take away at any time. I called Tony to discuss the situation. We suspected they might try something like this, she said. They're desperate. What should I do? They're threatening more aggressive options if I don't agree. What's your gut telling you? I thought about it. That they're trying to regain control. That they still don't understand what they lost. Then trust that, Tony said simply. And remember, you have more allies than you realize. The next morning, I sent Daniel a brief email declining his proposal. Within an hour, my phone exploded with notifications. A company-wide email had been sent to all employees at my former workplace, naming me personally and claiming I had stolen proprietary client information and was actively sabotaging the company. Even worse, they had sent a similar message to every client in their database, including those I hadn't even spoken with yet. For a moment, panic seized me. They were trying to destroy my reputation before my business could even get established. How could I fight a company with those resources? Then my phone started ringing, not with threats or cancellations, but with support. I just got the most unprofessional email I've ever seen. said the manager from the ice cream factory. Is everything okay? One after another, clients called, not to distance themselves, but to express outrage at the company's tactics. Several forwarded me the email they'd received, asking how they could help. By mid-afternoon, something remarkable was happening. Clients were responding to the company's mass email and copying all other recipients. They were defending me, explaining in detailed messages exactly why they had chosen to work with me instead. The medical storage director wrote about how I had prevented a catastrophic failure that would have destroyed $2 million in vaccines. The brewery engineer described the custom monitoring system I had designed that saved them thousands in wasted product monthly. The dairy plant manager detailed how my emergency response during a power outage had prevented them from losing a week's production. Message after message, story after story, creating a public record of exactly what the company had thrown away when they decided I was too expensive. By evening, something had shifted. Daniel called, his voice subdued. The board meeting just ended, he said. We're withdrawing all claims against you and your company. What changed their minds? The client emails. They were eye-opening. Several board members hadn't realized the extent of what you provided beyond basic account management. He paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for how this played out. As the weeks passed, my new company grew steadily. By the end of the second month, we had signed agreements with 32 facilities, most from my previous client list, but some new ones who had heard about our approach through industry connections. I hired my first employees, 2 technicians who had quit the company in frustration over the new management style, and an operations coordinator to help manage the growing workload. Then came the news that completed my vindication. The company's industrial refrigeration division was being sold to a competitor at a fraction of its former value. The division that I had built from 3 struggling accounts to 47 thriving relationships had collapsed without my knowledge and connections. Daniel called one last time. It's official, he said. The division is gone. The board decided to cut their losses. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Many good people still worked there. Don't be. It was inevitable after we lost the pharmaceutical chain contract yesterday. That was the final blow. He sounded resigned. You know what the craziest part is? If they had just valued what you built in the first place, none of this would have happened. 6 months later, I stood in the newly expanded offices of Precision Temperature Solutions, looking at our team of 15 employees. We now service 63 facilities across 3 states. We had just been featured in an industry magazine as an innovative disruptor in the industrial refrigeration sector. The article included a sidebar about how the business began, with one expert who was undervalued by management, and clients who recognized what her former company couldn't see. That evening, I hosted a small celebration for the original 12 clients who had backed my new venture. As we toasted our success, Tony raised her glass. To knowing your worth, she said, and to making others recognize it too. I smiled, thinking about how differently things might have turned out if the company had simply acknowledged the value I had created. If they had recognized that client relationships were built on trust and knowledge, not just names on a list. They had demanded I surrender my client list. What they got was exactly what they asked for, nothing more, nothing less. And that simple compliance had become the most effective revenge possible, watching them destroy themselves through their own short-sightedness, while I built something stronger from the ruins. If you've enjoyed this story of workplace vindication, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of corporate justice. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been undervalued at work or witnessed someone else's expertise being dismissed? Your stories matter, and this community is here to listen.